Thank you, Pyra. I'm joined here with Sven Skeren, the jungler from SK, to talk about his win. First of all, congratulations. You just took down one of the top 3 teams here in Europe. And with that win, you've won 3 out of the 4 games you've last played. Has that changed the confidence on your team?
Yesterday it was pretty hard losing because we kind of felt like we kind of won the game, but then we threw the game because we're pretty bad calls right now. And as well in this game, we almost lost it. Like we almost threw it, I mean. And I guess it gives us a lot more confidence. But after yesterday, we kind of needed this win today to, otherwise it would be like false hope. But yeah, it feels good.
Well, you talked about almost losing the game, but there was a lot of hard places in that game to potentially lose the game. I want to talk about the Jace power spike because it was so incredibly difficult to deal with. But how did you deal with it?
I don't know. Jace is really frustrating to play against. Like once the bot lane rotates up to mid and they start like grouping around mid, and every time he just hit one EQ and there was like one had to base, so we had to really play around with like, okay, can we try and engage before we get poked, or which we didn't do that well, but it still worked out.
Yeah, it worked out, but you're up against H2K and the early game is so incredibly strong. How did you find the openings in the armor to push the early game win?
I felt like they were using Lulex in a pretty wrong way. Like he had to cover for bot lane and top lane, otherwise they couldn't even farm after the lane swap. While I was pretty farmed up, I was like level 4 or 5 when he was level 2, because they just sacrificed everything for him, which kind of gave us an advantage. Like he had to cover for bot, so we got a first blood there, and yeah, it just snowballed the game, I think.
Well, you talked about it snowballing the game. Did you feel like you had the game all the way through that, or was it when you managed to miraculously steal the Baron? Was that where you felt like you had the game? Was it just you had the game from the very start?
Obviously, we did not have the game from the very start. I feel like after we won a team fight around Baron, and where we should have gotten the Baron kinda, then I feel like it was our game, but then something went wrong and we didn't get the Baron, but then after I stole it, then yeah, I kind of felt like it was our game.
Well, congratulations once again on the win, Sven Skeren. We're going to shoot it over to the analyst desk to close out the day.
Thank you so much, Pulse. We're also joined by Crepo here to shine a light on that game. Must have been very interesting. You took off your jacket. Luckily, this is the last game of the day because who knows what would happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were here to analyze League of Legends.
We are. We just listened to Sven Skeren.
Talk about my clothes?
Well, actually, what I wanted to ask you, you mentioned in the game that you thought that SK was playing to the level of their opponent in H2K. In general, though, we had the same echoing here on SK Gaming, that especially in the early game, so much better than what we've seen from them so far.
Well, we talked about this before the game, how SK really wants standard lanes. That's where they can perform well. Freddy in the top lane had a great game against Odo Ahmed. Bottom lane, the Lulu Caitlyn pick for them. So, like, they picked to have the strong standard lanes. H2K swapped in the start, but it was a very fast swap. They took the tower, left Odo Ahmed top lane, and that meant we still got to see Lulu Caitlyn be the bully lane. And really, SK Gaming just from minute 5 got a fairly decent goal lead, and that delayed this whole power spike with the poke from H2K so much that it bought enough time for SK to keep extending the goal lead.
I have to kind of open up here and say I was wrong in the start of this game. I was thinking, can Freddy really face up against Odo Amne? Yes, he can. Freddy is kind of back on track here. Odo Amne is not having the best week when it comes to getting focused and then his performance on top of it. I think it's a blip, but still Freddy has raised his game significantly from weeks 1 to 3, now into 4 and 5. We're seeing a lot more of the old Freddy that we used to.
Yeah, and coming in week 3, we were talking about how Sven Skeren and honestly, Freddy too were just performing subpar. And you say Freddy, but I say Sven Skeren honestly, because this game, he was spending so much time in H2K's blue jungle that it allowed Freddy to play with absolutely no restraints. He could move up forward whenever he wanted. He could bully that lane. And honestly, Sven Skeren for me carried this match because not only did he give the start of that early game advantage, in addition to that, once it got rough, he stole that Baron. And that was crucial for this point in the game. And I feel if H2K got that Baron, it was likely over because Baron with double poke is so hard to deal with. And those Baron buff minions make it so easy to deal with the poke as well. So very crucial objective right there.
But we've seen this problem before for H2K. When it is, you know, standard lanes, okay, there was the lane swap for the first 4 minutes, but then back to standard after, where they don't tend to get any goal lead, and then suddenly Lulex becomes a very easy target for the enemy jungler. As you said, Svensson did a great job, but also every single lane, the mid lane was won by SK Gaming, the bot lane was won by them, and they used that really, really effectively. So Dragons became a big factor for them as well. This time around, they got 5 Dragons. Last time, they got denied it just in the very end.
Well, in my mind too, you say Lulu's to be scouted out by the enemy jungler, but they just H2K, they tried and go for that dive bottom up against a Lulu and a Caitlyn, which didn't work out, which is very hard, and then they did it again. They just seemed kind of lost.
Yeah, I feel like whereas usually you see H2K go for the dive as a beautiful opening in the game, this time it felt forced. It was too predictable, and honestly, why would you go for the dive when you're running poke? If you want to group up, that's fine, but just group up in front of the tower, poke them out, eventually take down the tower, whittle it down, but don't put yourself in a position where you can get punished. Usually when H2K dive, they do it with full information, deep vision, then the dive. Right now they had no vision. He walked in and he just got chunked out.
Especially also because SK Gaming ran a composition that had very little engage. I mean, it was basically a Gnar TPing in from a flank or Sven trying to flank. That was it. So H2K could have just chilled for 15 minutes, then start grouping, and SK wouldn't be able to do a whole lot. We saw it in the mid game. It became a problem, but SK was so far from the early game that they managed to still bounce back.
Yeah, very well done by SK Gaming in that one. Turning to the league overall, though, one player is our fantasy leader of the day. He shows no signs of slowing down as the summer continues, and it is SK's Fox. He racked up 6 kills and 11 assists as Azir in his team's second win this week for a total of 32 fantasy points. That is the highest today. Very impressive Azir play from him.
Yeah, I think he just had a lot of crucial ultimates that either blocked some of the H2K members or just bought enough time later in the game, especially once that poke wasn't enough to take down people half HP. That poke dropped down in value, and then suddenly Fox managed to keep Candy Panda alive. And that Caitlyn was enough to take down these towers, these inhibitors, and yeah, fantastic performance.
And I like that he's playing more teamfight mages. I mean, you don't have to go LeBlanc. No Zed coming in for himself.
Yeah.
That is something that really benefits him. No Zed. Don't want to see that. Teamfight mages, you can perform well on them, confident, big team fights as well. I mean, he's diving in and out, and honestly, great performance.
Yeah, fantastically. He is our fantasy leader, but now for a look at who's truly OP this week, we're going to hand it over to Quickshot.
Thank you very much, Shucks and guys. And